Mohammed Shah was a school teacher before the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan 3 years ago. Now he has no schoolroom. He has become a committed mujahid, an Afghan freedom fighter, who loathes the killing that now surrounds him. He has seen at first hand the effect of the attempted Soviet takeover of his country on the people in the towns and villages. He believes that the Soviet occupation has damaged the minds as well as the bodies of many of his fellow countrymen.
Always in the night fighting, in the days fighting, much people is killed, men saw in did men, mujahid men, Muslim men, you know. Now all school is finished, you know. Student no go to school, and some old people before and very good. And now all people smoke hashish, very bad, in different tablets, very bad for India. Afghanistan people now much needed to doctor, because before in my school, you know, some people, men smoke hashish. I thought this is a crazy, you know, but now I sometimes smoke hashish because my idea is no good.
Afghanistan is a country of villages, of tribal loyalties. It is an old, self-enclosed nation, remote from the values of the modern world. It's a nation proud of its isolation and separateness. It's a nation where literacy is almost non-existent, where the international battles between totalitarianism and democracy, between communism and capitalism, were until recently totally alien and irrelevant. In the third year of the war, the people continue to struggle to maintain their lives. They are by custom and training capable of enduring hardships. But gradually the war is encroaching on their stoical society. Food prices are rising. More and more villages are being drawn into the war. Some have already vanished under Soviet bombardments. Afghan society was traditionally violent, but this tribal violence was a contained, controlled part of the society, a society where men's souls are hardened against fire. But now the fire comes from heaven without warning. "10,000 people lived in this town on the outskirts of Kandahar city. It took only about a day of continuous bombardment to reduce it to a ruin where shells of unexploded Soviet bombs sit in the homes they wrecked, gifts from the Soviet superpower. A few survivors move like ghosts through the rubble. The threat and reality of this kind of destruction has driven many villagers to Pakistan, some 2.5 million. And here on the surface at least, it seems as if the Afghan refugees are quickly threading together their customary life, as is suggested by this flourishing bazaar where Afghans trade. In a nearby refugee camp, Afghan life seems to be following its familiar rules. Life here is, from a material point of view, just adequate. There is a bare minimum of water and clothing, shelter, homes mainly built by the refugees themselves, using earth foundations. The only malnutrition is among the very young and the very old. Men of fighting age are not common here. The refugees survive by the aid they get from the Pakistan government and by the goods they sell. Any wandering journalist will be shown a display of the aid provided by sympathetic states. There is even a clinic in this camp, donated by the Saudi Arabian government. And Saudi Arabia's Red Crescent organization has poured a lot of aid into many of the refugee camps. But as this angry woman waving petitions for more aid rejected by the Pakistan bureaucracy suggests, it's an illusion to think that Afghan life can be built outside Afghanistan. In fact, the camp near the bazaar, with its well-clothed children, is in effect a show camp designed to ease the conscience of the world. Other camps like this, where there is only one meager source of water, and where Western journalists are not encouraged to come, are much more typical of the real plight of the Afghan refugees. Here there are inadequate supplies of water and food, poor sanitation, no education for the children, no health care. It's a matter of politics, not compassion, which particular group of Afghans get a good camp and adequate aid. This depends on their links with the outside world. The Iranian government, for example, supports only the more fundamentalist Islamic groups. The faces of these women, here unusually bared to the world, reveal the daily rhythm of misery and poverty. Poverty as total as this woman's, who sits near a tent, which holds all her possessions. The undernourished children grow unhealthy in this despairing camp. A woman cannot rouse herself to drive a dog off her rug. Some are obvious victims of the bear, victims of the Soviet helicopters. But the women too suffer in many of these camps. Their suffering, like their faces, is not as hidden as it used to be. As these women indignantly explain, they live in a world of old men and children, with many of their husbands and sons still fighting in Afghanistan. They haven't seen flour or cooking oil for over 6 months. They asked for medicine and were told that the nearest medical supplies were 3 days' walk away. They live as many as 10 families to one tent. These cramped conditions and very high temperatures breed illness. None of these women have been well since they left Afghanistan. They were given a large sack to collect bread, but that sack has not been filled for many weeks. But although debilitated, they have to continue to bear the main burden of life in these camps, of raising a new generation. They have to bear the mental strain of separation from their husbands and sons. Fortunately, they have been, so far, well received by the local people, who share their tribal origins. To make a nomadic people settle in one place for more than a few weeks means the destruction of the surrounding land. It probably means their destruction. It is almost certain to lead eventually to conflicts between the refugees and the peasants around them. So the refugees remain, despite the sympathy of the world, victims of the bear, steadily losing their pride, their way of life. Their only hope is that one day they will return to this, their homeland.